co-host Amanda and our lovely two-time Olympic champion Krista Temple. For me, honestly, guys, this is a really exciting journey. I've been manifesting this for many years, and I would love to let my lovely co-host take it away and really just introduce Krista, and please take it away.
Thank you so much, Craig. So Krista and I, we met through your sister, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember I showed up at your house one day, got changed, got ready in your bathroom, and Marla and I went out that night. Do you remember that?
I think we ended up all going out, didn't we?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we all did. Yeah, I think we all did. That's how we met. But we kind of lost contact for a few years. And then during, the pandemic, Krista and I rekindled our friendship and just really were a support unit for each other during such trying times. And with this podcast coming into fruition, I just thought that you were such a perfect guest because the name of the podcast kind of explains it, right? The Guest Perception Podcast. And I feel like you've had some really interesting perceptions in your own life and you've accomplished a lot of things. So one of the things you've done is you're an Olympian. So do you want to maybe share a little bit about that?
Sure. I started rowing in 2001. And that's an interesting story in and of itself because actually my sister started rowing before me and she was doing it as at SFU to, get healthy, meet people, more social thing. But as soon as she started, I was like, hey, I feel like that might be my sport. Like, can you talk to the coach and see if maybe gauge her feeling on it? So every day Leah would come home and go into practice and enjoying herself. And she was like, she's so busy. I didn't do it. And I was at Douglas at the time that I transferred to SFU. So when I transferred to SFU, I was like, hey, my sister is like sucking at coordinating this. I'm going to go up to the convocation malls where they set up all the clubs and they have all the tables set up. It's like the car club and this club. And I went in there to find the rowing table. And this guy, John Enemark, jumped out and was like, do you want to row? So he saw a tall chick walking through and I was like, that's what I'm here for. And I literally signed up. And I think the first time I was on the water, it was like, I finally found it. Cause I had been looking for a sport. My dad was always active in sports, cycling, and it was always around me. But, they wanted me to play basketball cause I was tall, but no, don't. Personal space and balls, hand-eye coordination, not my jam. And yeah, volleyball wasn't really shining. And then rowing, it was like this intuitive sense that I belonged and that I somehow knew what I was doing, even though I had no business knowing what I was doing. And so from 2001, when I started rowing, I started to dream about going to the Olympics.
Would you say that was like a manifestation that you were having? Like you were manifesting it or?
I immediately just like got eyes on it. Yeah. Like eyes on the prize. It was like, I started to look up some of the different fitness tests of like what the women in the national team were doing. Tried to calculate like, how does it work? Like, could it possibly happen by 2004? That's a bit lofty. Okay. Well, then you have 2008 with the Olympics. They only come every 4 years. So
you knew right away.
I knew weirdly right away. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah.
I just got tingles all over my body. Yeah.
It's funny when that happens. I always laugh at myself. I remember this girl who also was in the Learn to Row program was sitting behind me. And so you're holding your oar kind of like just over your lap and your oar is sitting on the water. If you're not rowing, you're just holding balance of the boat. And she had her hands pushed down so that her oar was down on her lap and it was up off the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned around and I took her hand and I put it where it was supposed to be. And I remember she just hated me. She shortly after quit. And I was like, well, it's just so funny how I was like already like Little Miss Bossy Pants and like Little Miss, like I had this weird feeling of what it was supposed to feel like.
You were in your intuition.
Weird. But like so cool.
Right.
And rowing's so cool for that because it is such a sensation. It's a constant sensation of gliding along the water and of moving. Very, it's like very peaceful and aggressive and just really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone that tries rowing likes it. Like everyone that, if you try it, you get it. But
Yeah.
a lot of people don't try it because it's not the most accessible sport.
I've actually heard that. Somebody on my Instagram mentioned, and because I saw that she was a rower, and she said, yeah, I just decided to try it one day and I loved it.
Yeah.
Craig, do you have any questions about, because
I'm-
you have some stuff.
I'm
you're
just really
about?
curious about, the lead up to where, where you started to how to start to engage, and there's got to be that, because you feel it, right? But when the time from when you feel it to the time from where you start to actually engage, there's got to be a switch in between. And what was that? Was there some sort of somebody that stepped in your life? Was there something has to tell you, or intuition, or like for me, I'm so against, everybody's so against what I'm doing, and it feels like I'm so alone on the journey that I'm on. So it's strange, as for athletes and everyone in business, and in terms of just real life, when we feel something, it's always seems to be so opposite. So in your perspective, what was that feeling, or what was that moment, or what was that just that light switch that really helped you sort of really just engage?
I think for me, I was I felt quite supported, quite confident that I was doing the right thing. I mean, when I started in 2001, I was completing my bachelor's degree at Simon Fraser. So I was busy going to school. So it made sense to have something that aligned schooling, a sport, you worked at a restaurant. And then as I was getting close, so by 2003, 2004 is when I was starting to get curious about going to the Women's Training Center. The Women's Training Center is in Ontario. So we had a bunch of really cool opportunities, one of which was English Henley, to go as a group, UBC, SFU, and UVic. And so I was meeting a lot of different athletes that had a lot of different potential from universities. And one of the girls got D-carded, and D-carded is basically when the national team decides that, like, you're a developmental athlete. I think it was like $500 a month. And one of my good friends, Corolla, they gave her the D-card. And then I was like, well, I want a D-card. And she had to go over to Victoria to talk to the national team coach. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, what if I just come with you? It'll be fun. We'll like go together. And I thought I'll just maybe try to like skirt my way in there. So I sat outside of the meeting, and someone was late. And I don't even remember how exactly I did it, but I got in there with Al Morrow, the head coach of the women's program at the time. And I sat down with him. I was like, well, what do you think about me coming to the national team, like to the women's center? And he's like, I absolutely support that. I think if you want to be the best, you have to be around the best, and you have to come see what everyone's doing. And I was like, okay, that's all I needed. It was all I needed for someone to tell me that I was welcome. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out this.
Yeah, let's go.
So, yeah, I did have a little bit of pushback, I think, from a local coach here. Just thought that I was not going to get the resources that I planned or needed.
Right.
But I think he kind of just wanted to keep me here in a way. I just don't know if he had the vision.
Right. Which brings me I know, Craig, that you wanted to say something, but this kind of brings up this one part of the book, which was, I was a part of a team. My success was not mine alone, which kind of, had me question, how have you applied this team mentality, within that you got from rowing, because you were a part of a team of 8, and have you applied that? How did that work within rowing, and how have you applied that outside of rowing, the team aspect?
I think I learned that that's how I'm driven, for sure. Okay. And so I basically, I'm always trying to find a team in everything I do that's like important to me, because I am not an individually driven individual. Like, I'll let myself down, but for rowing, practices were 5:20 in the morning. And the thought of not showing up, even though I did it a few times, the boat actually couldn't go out if you don't have enough people show up.
Oh, wow.
And so you could just lay in bed and be like, I couldn't.
Right.
And so it drove me to, it was like, I don't know if you've done any fitness classes where you have to like register the night before and then you have to cancel in a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
It's like built-in accountability.
Yeah.
This is what a team was for me. So if I am accountable to other people, then I have that built-in accountability. So I basically just realize that that's what I do. And then now, it's just in everything.
Right.
Did you have to recreate that in yourself, that accountability? Because I feel like, and what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing the accountability came from others and came from sort of the team aspect, but the accountability to reverse that, to have from the inside out, was there something that was, because it's funny you mentioned, and I was going to comment before she asked that question, but you mentioned you wanted to kind of get in the group and really just be a part of the others. And for me, that really rang a bell in my mind. When you can't get a seat at the table, you serve water, right? And then, all the people that are around the table, you start to engage in conversation. You hear what and you start to build off that. So that really came in deep for me. So what are your thoughts just kind of about, how did you recreate that energy from the team aspect to really just yourself, and trying to, because it has to come from within. No matter what we do, we have to have that momentum, that drive, that hunger, that determination, that maniac inside of us that keeps us determined and going and consistent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was that?
There was definitely a maniac. There was definitely a maniac. I was so driven. And I guess I say that I was showing up for the team, but I was showing up for myself. And there was constant feedback that I was valuable, and like, what a gift, right? Like,
so beautiful.
I did have some hard times, and I definitely had setbacks and failures along the way. But in general, I really did feel like that's where I was meant to be.
Like, did you feel that, like every time you showed up, that you were kind of being witnessed in a way where it's like, I'm here, and you were feeling valued by showing up, and that maybe continued to give you
and I'm
more.
working towards something that's so special. I mean, the Olympics, I see it a little bit differently now, but at the time, I loved going into elementary schools and asking little kids what they think of the Olympics. It's the cutest answer ever. Like, is it all about the world coming together for like world peace? And I'm like, yes. I believe that the Olympics really showcases people in such a great way. And I don't think we even get to see half of the phenomenal stories that are there, because there's so many cool.
Yeah.
I remember when I was finished competing in Beijing, I was like on the internet, policing the internet. So if people were saying anything, I was like, you don't understand some of the cool stories. And they weren't getting back here. They weren't getting showcased the way that I thought they should be. And that it is such a cool experience. So working towards that was fun.
What does pre-Olympic depression look like in your eyes?
Pre-Olympic?
Pre or post?
Post and pre. Apparently there is two. There's pre-Olympic depression, which some people experience, and then there's post-Olympic depression. Did you experience both?
Pre-Olympics is you're very isolated. My dad joked, because my dad did a lot of proofreading for my book, and he said, you talk about this bubble. You're always talking about a bubble. You're in a bubble. Very much so. And so for someone like me who is anxious and can, go towards a more depressive state, in a way it was easier because I didn't have to cope with anything else. I was in that bubble, and all I had to cope with was rowing. I was away from my family. I didn't have to go to family functions, wasn't working. So all I had to do was rowing, and it was such a the schedule was full, and I was tired, and just dedicated to that. So, but I could see that as being isolating and can be like that pre-Olympic depression, if you want to call it that. And then post is that like coming off of the high. Beyond
like
the
what
finish line.
moment.
What happens when the endorphins fade? And even at the Olympics, everyone starts getting sick. And everyone's going to the closing ceremonies, and everyone's just feeling like crap. I was rubbing Tiger Balm on my feet because I literally hadn't even stood. I had been sitting in a boat, like I was like, oh, my feet are killing, like just to walk around and like go and see different sports and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I'm so strong, but I'm so weak.
So, one of the things, does it really, because you're a mom now, how do your children, do they realize like, hey, my mom's a 2-time Olympic silver medalist? Does it, hit home yet? Because they're still pretty little. And how is that at home with, transferring from being an Olympian and focusing on that to now being, a mom? And we know that the reward system there is not nearly as good.
No, it's not as glorified, is it?
It's not as good,
Holy
babe.
Toledo, it's humbling.
Yeah.
Real life is humbling.
It is.
I think I said to you before, when I came off the Olympics and I'm getting all these, you must be so dedicated. You do this, you do that, you got a medal. And I would always feel like almost like bashful about that. And And I always said, I think that real life things should get medals too. Like, why are we getting this special when actually just like living life is really hard? I did not know how hard when I was saying that back then. I just kind of intuitively knew, but now I'm like, holy, like, uh, yeah, it's at home. I don't really live in that Olympic bubble anymore. And my kids, I think I played my race for them this year, and my little guy was pretty cute about it. He was like, "Is that you? Was Daddy there too?" Like he was trying to figure out, like, was this just you or were the rest of the family there? And he reminded me again why I liked elementary school, doing those elementary school visits so much, because they're just so cute and innocent, and I love them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think about a little bit older is when they maybe will figure it out and like start telling their friends or going to school. And
yeah,
I have a teammate that said her daughter was like blasting her out of the water and like telling parents and stuff.
Right,
So
right.
cute.
Yeah, it is
So
really
cute.
cute, right?
So to take that a little bit deeper, do you see yourself? I mean, we talked about the aspect of teamwork, the aspect of when you were in that moment and the training and everything that you experienced. Do you find that applies to your children? Do you find you're transferring that subconsciously or consciously to your children in some sort of aspect? Because that's you. That's you. I mean, naturally, that's who you are. That's how you live. That's how you serve. And do you kind of see, like, do you catch yourself in moments where you're like, oh, I'm thinking like an Olympian, or it's like we're trying to, because I have a 4-year-old at home, right? So kids, oh my God, kids are so crazy, so different, and sometimes I want to talk about stocks with my kids because I'm so upset. But and I mean, kids are just, it's something like that, right? Kids are kids. So I mean, what have you sort of, do you find you've created sort of the ambience of Olympian transferred to your children at all?
Not really. No. I think teamwork and loyalty go hand in hand, and I'm very loyal as well. And so loyalty within family is really important to me. Showing up for one another. So say we're like our own little team. But yeah, my son has not been inclined, same as me, has not yet shown any inclination or great athletic prowess yet.
Well,
but I don't have any pressure on him because once again, I didn't start till I was 21. So like,
yeah. Yeah. Well,
you find it.
This actually brings me to this quote in your book that I really love. And you wrote, "When it was fun, it was more fun as a team. When it wasn't fun, I was glad I was not alone. We suffered as a team." Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. We suffered as a team through the extreme heat, humidity, rain, snow, sleet, ice, burning legs, and shredded hands. We did it together.
Mm-hmm. So much more fun to do it together. I mean, if you're gonna suffer, who likes to suffer alone? I mean, that's one of the things about suffering, right? Like, I heard someone recently say, when you are suffering, the hardest part is to feel like you're alone in it. And so in sharing and in talking and all the things, I think that, and we did do a lot of talking and bonding as a team, and suffering. Yeah, we did. And it was, in a way, fun because we were doing it together.
Yeah. I feel like, even within this podcast, I was really fortunate to be asked to come into this. And one of the things that really holds me into it is, the teamwork and, being able to do things as a team and not feeling alone. 'Cause I have felt really alone a lot of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just nice that, you really touched on that, because I feel like it's so important that we don't lose the connection to each other,
Mm-hmm.
and, one of the things that you've been going through recently is, unfortunately you've been battling another, Olympic battle
Mm-hmm.
with breast cancer,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes. Yeah. I've called it the Olympic, what do I call it? Like the Olympic mindset, or the, battle, a mental battle of huge proportions shifting. I mean, I think I was saying to you earlier, when I finished rowing, I felt like so much had happened. And then now, as time passes, that starts to become a smaller piece of who I am. And so much more has happened. I'm married, I have kids, I have dogs. And then the breast cancer thing was kind of a whammy of last year. I was diagnosed on April 13th of 2022.
Wow, that's almost to the day here. Like we're
Yeah.
coming up really close to your anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And how are you doing now, right now, with that?
Breast cancer? I mean, I think it's funny because, I don't, right now it's weird. Treatment and breast cancer are deceivingly and maybe like unknowingly how hard. Like I didn't really know much about breast. You don't go and research these things
No.
and figure out all the things about them until you have to, right? And so
Yeah.
I've learned a lot quickly.
Yeah.
From I think around the 27th was when I had my second mammogram to the 13th. I had to wait that like 2-week period for the diagnosis. And in that time is when I spent a lot of time actually listening to podcasts. When I would just look up breast cancer warrior, and then I would just listen to some, badass woman talk about how she overcame it. And so I learned a lot quickly. But the treatment, it's long. It's a long process of hormone therapies and kind of feeling like low grade shit,
Yeah.
which is hard for me.
Yeah, you had to
it's
shave
been-
your head. I
I
remember
shaved
like
my head.
you had
yeah.
really long hair, and you know, when you're going through chemo, you had to shave your hair off, and you know,
Yeah.
how was that?
That was wild. I chose to shave my head before it started to fall out. I had a ton of hair. As you can see now, it's coming back. And I had listened to many women tell the story of losing their hair and how traumatizing it was, because it starts to fall out and it starts to tangle and you're like trying to hang on to it and you don't want to let it go. And so I cut my hair short first. And then after my second chemo, it started to really shed. Like it was really falling out.
Yeah.
And I called my sister. I'm like, this is happening. And she's like, I'm coming over.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. And I messaged someone else I know who's has breast cancer as well. And she said, let me ask you this. Will it be better tomorrow? Because I said, should I do it? Should I just shave it? And she was like, will it be better tomorrow? And I was like, no, it won't be better tomorrow. So I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to, yeah. So my sister came over and we just shaved it.
Wow.
And I had my wig ready to go. And I never really ended up wearing the wig. I actually didn't really mind myself bald that much. It was pretty badass.
Yeah.
It got a little gnarly when like all the hair fell out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's just a trip.
Yeah.
The idea that you lose. So someone was talking about this recently. They said when I first got diagnosed, I called them and said, like, I have breast cancer. I'm probably going to lose my hair. It was one of the first things I said. And I was explaining it to her. It's not about the physical, like how you look. It's that losing your hair will be so significant and will make it so obvious that you're sick.
Right.
That like outward expression of being not well.
Right.
And so that's why you're like, oh my God, people are going to look at me. They're going to feel sorry for me, or they're going to see something. That was what made losing the hair hard.
Mm-hmm.
But once I just kind of embraced it, it wasn't actually that bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're basically like so exposed at that point.
So vulnerable.
Yeah.
Ew. I did not know. It's not me, like to
But-
be thrust into this situation where I'm like, I'm a healthy individual, the 2-time Olympian, like
Right.
what?
But now do you know, because we kind of talked about this on our walk for coffee earlier, that power of the vulnerability, and when you really lean into that,
Yeah.
and you feel like you've gotten a lot out of that, like leaning into the vulnerability aspect of yourself. And
Totally. And the shift too, and like what I see is beautiful. When you don't have, like, I had this huge, long, luscious hair my whole life.
yeah, it's gorgeous.
And then when you take it away, I like still saw beauty in other things. And then I was like, wow, like, you can hide behind hair or
makeup.
yeah. And I definitely saw beauty differently. and that vulnerability too of like seeing my breast friends going through the same thing. I was like, oh, this hair is gnarly. And then my girlfriend Lindsay would send me a picture of her. I'm like, oh my God, you look so cute.
Yeah.
Like, I love your little bald head.
Yeah.
My sister always told me how cute I was and how much she loved my little bald head. But you know that
Aw.
that empathetic view of other people
Yeah.
that you sometimes don't have for yourself. I
Yeah.
had definitely had to.
You were able to kind of mirror it.
Yeah.
You're going, okay, you know, I'm feeling empathy for you, and
Why am I feeling so hard on myself?
totally.
Yeah. To analyze that.
Totally.
I find it super interesting you mentioned vulnerability, because I feel that that is the biggest connection between where we are and where we're going. You know, I feel that the vulnerability aspect of people, once it really comes out, people start to kind of circle around your room, and you really are able to find your tribe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I love how you mentioned that, because it's so meaningful and deep to me. So what's next for Krista? What's next? I mean, we went through everything from A to Z.
So lately, I decided to add, it's funny because sometimes I feel like I'm not doing much. And then I go back over the last little while, I'm like, wow, I actually been doing a lot. During the pandemic, I found a lot of people on Instagram who I bonded with, and there were different people who were either creating hilarious memes or like never had created friendships on Instagram before the pandemic. So I guess we were all at home. We were maybe all on our phones a bit more.
Yeah.
And I met a woman named Samara, and she is a homeschooling mom in Winnipeg. And she was talking about these water machines. And I was following her journey and very interested. The water being connected to cancer therapies.
And rowing, you have your own water kind of connection.
And that too. And that's what I was saying to you, like how funny is it that I've always been around water. I'm a water baby. I'm a Pisces. A tattoo in the back of my neck. I got the water symbol. And then now come full circle and have started an online business selling water ionizers. I did that all while doing all this other stuff, and somehow just
I really love the water. You were so gracious to come and bring me a copy of Beyond the Finish Line and What Happens When the Endorphins Fade, as well as a bottle of water. And I told you that was the most water I've drank since my last ultrasound when I was pregnant. And it has such a different, flavor to it. And I feel like water is super important. And so how have you, felt now that you've been drinking more water and using the ionizer? Because this is popular. Like Lucho has one. People have this. My other friend has it as well.
Yeah, like I was saying, the culture of rowing was to always be hydrated. As an athlete, we were constantly paying attention to that. You're like, you go pee, you look at the color of your pee. You're like, am I hydrated? Am I ready for practice? It's like, I don't think most people do most people do that? Probably not.
No, and
it's an athlete thing.
You said that you actually got tested with your hydration, and if you weren't hydrated enough, you couldn't row.
You had to hydrate before practice in order to be able to like withstand, because obviously you don't want to like crash and burn. You're all dehydrated, and
right.
So I've always been focusing on hydration. What I didn't realize that all water is not created equally, and I had this false assumption that our tap water. I mean, it's not really a false assumption. I think our tap water here in BC, Canada is pretty good. Potentially. All water has to be treated by chlorine, and they, what it comes down to is like small amounts of bad things over time aren't ideal. And so I've learned a lot, and the ionizer, basically, it's like 7 titanium plates, electrically charges the water and changes its molecular state. So basically makes the hydrogen, takes a hydrogen away from the H2O. And so the hydrogen-rich water can actually hydrate you at a cellular level and acts as an antioxidant within the body. It's got like anti-aging, anti-disease properties. And so why wouldn't we be drinking? I mean, obviously it's an investment. Everyone doesn't have access to this, but if you are interested, it makes so much sense. at least having a pre-filter at your home.
So does you mentioned at a cellular level. So when you oxidize it, does it actually allow it to go within the cell?
I think it permeates at a cell level. Yes.
Okay, because I actually had this thing, and it's a little bizarre, but I got sick, and I was diagnosed with Gulf War syndrome, which was well, it's biological warfare. And basically it goes within the cell so that they can't tell that you're actually sick. It was released by the US government, and somehow I contracted it. It went upstream, and I was deathly ill. So I was in the medical, doctor's offices getting chelation and things like that. And what they had to do was basically they determined that it was within the cell, the disease. I had to go to Chinese medicine to actually get healthy, and it took me about 2 years.
Wow.
I'm curious if this water, is going to
Well, it has detoxing properties too, right? So, I mean, I've heard it's testimonies of people with all sorts of different chronic illnesses have benefit with the water. So I'm amazed by it every day.
Right.
Like I just got that machine and was just like, holy, like the 11.5 and the 2.5 can replace different cleaning agents in the home, like create a whole like non-toxic environment. I mean, I still have so much to learn, but super impressed so far.
Was there something like you took one sip and you're just like, this is it? The Olympian brain came and you're like, this is what I need. Like what like, because again, there's so much crap out there, right? Everybody, you walk around the corner, everybody's selling everything. So what was like, was there something that you felt right away?
Well, I followed Samara for a long time. I watched the whole journey. of her selling them and sharing about the water. So I sat back quietly observing for a long time. I'm a slow adopter. I'm not one to just like pick up something and then like.
Yeah, me too.
It takes, if I buy something new, I'll let it sit on the counter and I won't set it up.
You have more
finally
like an analytical brain.
Yeah, I'm just, slow adopter.
Yeah.
So it took me a while, but yeah, now I'm like turning into a water snob. I'm not fully there yet, but I'm pretty close.
Yeah.
And you can taste the difference. Tap water tastes a bit more chemically.
Yeah. I noticed that I have like sensory issues. So I don't like tags or anything. And I have like, tapping and things that just really irritate me. But I really, the first thing I noticed with the water was the sensation of it on my tongue. It almost feels smoother. And I don't know why that was.
People say that, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a very highly sensitive person. I have a lot of sensory issues where, repeated sounds drive me crazy and things like that. And when I drank the water, I was like, it was actually really easy for me to drink it.
Mm-hmm. And because it does hydrate at a cellular level, people say also it doesn't feel like heavy and sloshy in their gut.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I think that's with anything, right? Like when we try something new, it's going to take, time, right? You can't eat one apple and then expect to be, ripped, you can't go to the gym one time and lift 60-pound dumbbell and come out of it. It's just not realistic. So I think with anything, it needs time and experience and I believe the consistency, the repetition, as our lovely athlete knows, how many times did you get out there at 5:30 in the morning to keep rowing, to keep going, to keep, that consistency, that repetition, that, and the vulnerability to go out there and compete against other people where it's to me, it's just so inspiring and so exciting. And, thank you so much. We're so blessed to have you here. And,
thanks.
You're such a beautiful, lovely soul. And our lovely Amanda, thank you so much for bringing her on.
Krista's been such a trooper because, I think today you really had to pull the Olympian out of the closet, right? Because you weren't feeling well today. And I've been actually really struggling myself. So, you had something going on for you and I had some stuff going on for me, but you really, you were able to show up, which is incredible.
I think I know why she showed up.
Team.
I was just going to say teamwork.
Yeah.
I didn't want to let Amanda down. I mean,
teamwork.
Totally. Yeah.
And I'm, you know what? I'm one of these people that I'm super understanding And when I got the message from you, you're like, I'm not sure if I can make it. I was like, absolutely, no problem. I totally get it. Craig and I can talk about something else among ourselves. But, you really impressed me today that you are currently battling breast cancer. You have an illness right now. You're not feeling great. You look beautiful, and you're a mom, not a rewarding job. And
Hardest
Not a
job in the
rewarding
world.
it's so hard, and it doesn't get a lot of credit.
That's
And
the true Olympian.
yeah, this is the true Olympian, being a mom. And bless our children's hearts. I love you guys, but when I go to the bank, they tell me I have no job.
Yes.
It's annoying.
Yes. My oncologist actually asked me what I do for work on our phone call the other day. And I was like, wondering what he was going to garner from that question. Like,
My
if
doctor,
I had a more stressful job, then that he would be. I don't really know. I kind of wish I asked, because I have been asked since I've had breast cancer quite a few times.
yeah.
Do you work outside of? Where do you work? Or
My doctor literally asks me that every single time I go to see my doctor.
Yeah.
And I'm at the point where I kind of want to bitch slap him.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this is my job. I
Yeah.
am raising
Yeah.
young people to be productive, within our
Humans,
humans in society.
Yeah.
It's a big job, and we get no credit for it.
It's almost like there's an expectation. There's an expectation of us doing more, especially on mothers and even yourself. As how do you maintain that expectation? How do you get creative with it? How do you have it serve you and not let it take control of you, right? And I think that's really the question that moving forward, what our lovely Krista Temple has to really answer to herself, because I believe the journey of breast cancer, the journey of yourself, that is going to be the most hardest experience with trying to answer that and using it to serve others. So super inspired.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think for anyone struggling, just to like never forget like the fighting spirit. The fighting spirit will carry you through. Like it's what, if you have a fighting spirit, you won't give up. You won't let in. It'll never be enough. You'll keep pushing forward. You stay in motion. And you just don't back down. And I think there's so many beautiful examples of fighting spirit in humans everywhere you look.
Yeah.
You know, showing up.
And the other
the
aspect,
90-year-old woman on Instagram who's like crushing weights.
right? Yeah,
Like,
I saw that. And the other aspect too is honoring your body and having that fight, but being able to listen as well when you need to just have some downtime. And so there's two sides to that coin, just to keep pushing through, but also just to honor where you currently are, because we can't be Olympians every day.
right.
You know?
I maybe need to work on that a little.
That's okay. I feel like we're all just a work in progress.
Totally.
And, being able to honor both sides of that coin, I think, is really important.
And guys, like, I mean, anybody out there that's looking to gain more information or trying to find that inspiration inside of them, please go check out Beyond the Finish Line by, it says Krista Guloien, but she is referred to now as Krista Temple.
Yeah.
So please check her book out, read it, find that inspiration, find that teamwork aspect. And really, I think this book and information in the book can carry so much further and help with so many aspects if anybody has any questions. So please, anybody, pick the book up and give it a read.
Yeah, and follow our podcast. You can get in touch with Krista through that. We'll provide a link to her Instagram account. And we're just really honored to have you here.
Thanks. I'm excited for you guys
to share your story with us. It's big, you've done some big things, and you're touching a lot of people on so many different levels. And it's okay. You don't need to be an Olympian every day.
That book's been sitting on the shelf for a while,
Yeah.
And I just kind of was re-inspired to kind of get back out there again. I don't know exactly how it all came together, but
And we
I said,
don't
"I'm
need to
gonna go
know.
dig that box out of the basement."
And we don't need to know, right?
No, it was just
Just go with the flow.
go with it.
Go with the flow.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
We just are so grateful that you were able to show up. 'Cause
We all rallied, guys.
Yeah, we rallied. This was teamwork today. Yeah.
Thank you as well, my dear. You're such a blessing to us, and
Oh.
you're so lovely and so beautiful. And I can feel your soul from here. So thank you
Aw,
so much. And
thank you.
we're so blessed to have you here.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Krista.